All right, so TikTok, huh? It's been everywhere lately.
Right? Definitely.
Uh,
Seems like you can't escape it. Good or bad.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're going to try to unpack today. You've seen the headlines, the controversies, all that. But we've been doing some digging, a lot of digging.
Stacks of stuff. News articles, legal stuff, even some analysis from think tanks, experts.
Exactly. So our mission is to figure out, is TikTok really that different from other social media, or are we seeing something new, something bigger maybe?
Well, what's interesting is it's not just an American thing anymore.
Right, not at all.
We've got reports from all over Europe, Asia, Africa even. It's global.
And it's been ramping up fast. Just in the past month alone, think about it. Russia hit them with some fines, then there's Romania worried about TikTok messing with their election, and Albania just went, boom, straight up banned.
Yeah, their prime minister, I think it was a speech he gave. He said something like, protect our children or we'll protect them from you.
Strong words for sure.
It shows you how seriously some countries are taking this. And to put it in perspective, over 20 countries now have taken some kind of action against TikTok.
So we're not just talking about like a few isolated incidents. This is a trend.
Definitely a pattern,
Yeah.
and it's worth understanding WHY.
Okay, so let's get down to it. The algorithm.
Yes, the heart of the beast.
I'll admit it, I get sucked in too. That For You page, it's like it reads my mind.
And that's both the genius of it and what makes people nervous.
Right. Like, how did they get it so good at knowing what I want to see?
Well, it's fascinating, actually. Their parent company, ByteDance, they perfected this algorithm with a different app called Douyin in China.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Huge success over there. And now that same tech is out in the world and is causing a stir.
So it's like we love it as users, endless content, all tailored to us.
But that's exactly what worries governments.
If it can hook US, that what? Imagine what else it could do.
Right, that level of engagement, especially among younger people, it's unprecedented. And that raises all sorts of concerns about influence and manipulation.
And it's not all doom and gloom, though, right? I mean, some of the worries are kind of like, oh no, I spent 3 hours watching cat videos.
True, there's a spectrum. But then you get into the serious stuff, like accusations of data sharing with the Chinese government.
Okay, yeah, that's where it gets a bit freaky.
For example, one report we have quotes this cybersecurity expert. He actually analyzed TikTok's code,
Whoa, getting deep.
and he found evidence of data being sent to servers in China, even when users thought they'd opted out of data collection.
Yeah, that's not great.
It feeds into this whole fear about what TikTok is really doing with our data.
And TikTok's response to all this, what are they saying?
Well, they're fighting back, obviously.
Mhm.
They've been really vocal about putting together teams to fight misinformation. They say the algorithm is neutral.
Trying to reassure everyone.
Right, they say they care about data security and privacy just as much as any other social media company.
But isn't there a whole other issue with like who actually own NES TikTok?
Ah, yes, the ownership puzzle. It's
Yeah.
a bit of a maze.
Because doesn't the Chinese government still have some say?
That's the crux of it. ByteDance claims TikTok is mostly owned by global investors now.
Okay, so not just a Chinese company anymore.
But the Chinese government says they still have a right to weigh in on any sale of the company.
So it's muddy. It's not a clean break.
Exactly. And this gets to a bigger issue that goes beyond just TikTok. It's making other Chinese companies nervous too.
About going global.
Yeah, there's this quote from Kevin Xu. He's a big tech investor. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically, every Chinese entrepreneur needs a political science degree these days.
Because it's not just about the tech anymore.
Right, the politics are tangled up in it now, and TikTok is like the case study.
So we've gone from funny videos to international intrigue.
It's a big jump, and it leads to a huge HE question. What if America just says no to TikTok?
A ban. What would that even look like?
Well, some countries have already done it, and there are lessons to be learned from them.
Like India. They banned it back in 2020, right?
Yeah, that was a big one. Sent shockwaves through the tech world.
What happened? Did it work?
Well, it definitely had a huge impact, especially on creators who had built their whole careers on TikTok.
So a lot of people scrambling to find new platforms.
Exactly. But there were winners, too. Platforms like YouTube and Instagram, they saw a surge of users in India.
Because everyone needed somewhere new to go.
Right. And those are American companies. So a potential U.S. ban could be a big win for them.
Interesting. But India's not the only example, though, right?
Nope. You've got Nepal. They banned it, then unbanned it. Russia's been handing out fines for content they don't like. And Indonesia, they forced TikTok into a partnership with a local company.
So it's a mixed bag. Some all-out bans, some trying to control it from the inside.
It's a spectrum. And that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating.
Because there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Exactly. Some countries are going for the nuke it from orbit approach,
While others are trying to be more surgical.
like Taiwan, the UK, Australia. They've banned it from government devices.
So keeping it away from official stuff.
Right, but they haven't gone for a full ban. They say that would be going too far, stepping on free speech.
Yeah, that's a tough balance. Security versus freedom.
And then there's Canada, which is kind of doing both. They banned it from government devices, and they're pressuring TikTok to close their offices there.
Wow. Playing a hardball.
But get this, TikTok actually claims in some legal filings that Canada told them to stall, to delay everything until the U.S. decided what they were going to do.
Oh, so they're like waiting for the U.S. to make the first move.
That's what TikTok alleges. It's like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see what America does.
Makes sense, because whatever the U.S. decides, it's going to have huge EE consequences.
No doubt about it. It could set a precedent for the whole world.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground here, but I think we're just getting started.
Oh, yeah. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We got a lot more to unpack.
So buckle up, listeners. This deep dive is about to get even deeper. So it seems like everyone's holding their breath, waiting to see what the U.S. is going to do.
It's certainly a pivotal decision that could have ripple effects across the globe.
But back to this middle ground approach. Some countries are banning TikTok from government devices, but not outright for everyone. Is that even effective? Can you really separate personal use from those security concerns?
It's a good question. And it gets to the heart of the debate. The argument is that by limiting TikTok's presence on government devices, you reduce the risk of data breaches and potential influence on official matters.
But what about the average person scrolling through TikTok on their lunch break? Are they not also susceptible to those same risks?
That's the counterargument, and it's a valid one. Critics of these partial bans argue that they create a false sense of security and don't address the broader concerns about TikTok's data practices and the potential for manipulation through its algorithm.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah.
The real question is, can you effectively mitigate the risks associated with TikTok without resorting to a complete ban, which obviously raises concerns about censorship and freedom of expression?
It's a tough one. And it feels like this whole situation is forcing us to confront some really fundamental questions about the role of technology in our lives. Where do we draw the line between national security and individual freedoms? How do we balance the benefits of a globalized internet with the potential risks?
You've hit the nail on the head. And what makes the TikTok case so compelling is that it's not just about one app. It's about the future of the internet itself. Are we headed towards a more fragmented, balkanized online world where access to information and platforms is determined by your location or your government's political stance? Or can we find a way to maintain a truly open and interconnected internet while addressing legitimate concerns about data security and national interests?
Okay, so let's break it down for our listener here. We've got this potential U.S. ban looming, but we've also seen different approaches from other countries. What are some of the key things we should be watching for to understand how this is all going to play out?
First and foremost, the legal battles are going to be crucial. TikTok is fighting back against these bans and restrictions, challenging them in court. The outcomes of these legal cases could set important precedents that influence how other countries approach this issue.
So it's not just about political decisions, but also about legal interpretations of free speech, data privacy, and the role of governments in regulating online platforms.
Exactly. And then there's the political dimension. We can't ignore the fact that the U.S.-China relationship is incredibly complex, and TikTok has become a symbol of that tension. Any decisions made about TikTok will be seen through that geopolitical lens.
It's like TikTok has become this pawn in a much bigger game.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And then you have the economic factors to consider. TikTok is a massive platform with millions of users and creators who rely on it for income and engagement. A ban would have a huge economic impact, not just for TikTok itself, but for the wider digital ecosystem.
So a ban could have a ripple effect, potentially impacting jobs, businesses, and the global flow of information and commerce.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to that fundamental question we posed at the beginning. Is TikTok truly different? Is it the origin of the app, its connection to ByteDance in China, that's driving this level of scrutiny? Or is it something more fundamental about the nature of its algorithm, its ability to curate content and shape user behavior in a way that we haven't seen before?
Yeah, because let's face it, almost every social media platform collects our data and uses algorithms to personalize our experience. What makes TikTok so different? Is it really just about the potential for the Chinese government to access that data? Or are there deeper concerns about the power of these algorithms themselves, regardless of who controls them?
Those are the questions that policymakers, tech experts, and really all of us need to be grappling with. Because the decisions we make about TikTok today will have far-reaching consequences, not just for this one app, but for the future of the internet and our relationship with technology as a whole.
Okay, so we've talked about the global pushback, the legal and political battles, the economic stakes, the algorithmic concerns. It's a lot to take in.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it highlights the complexity of this issue.
So given all of this, what's the most likely outcome? Is a U.S. ban inevitable?
It's hard to say with certainty. There are so many moving parts, so many competing interests. But what's clear is that the stakes are incredibly high.
So this story is far from over.
Not by a long shot. And the choices made in the coming months could shape the internet for years to come.
But what about our listener here, the individual trying to navigate this complex landscape? What can they do? Should they delete TikTok? Should they be worried?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed. Read beyond the headlines, seek out diverse perspectives, and engage in thoughtful discussions about the issues at stake. Don't just accept the sound bites and the easy answers. Dig deeper, ask questions, and form your own informed opinion.
So don't just get swept up in the TikTok dances and the viral trends.
Exactly. This is about much more than entertainment. This is about the future of our digital lives, our privacy, our freedom of expression, and the very structure of the internet itself.
Okay, so with all that said, let's try to distill this down to some key takeaways for our listener. What are the things they should really be paying attention to?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the future of TikTok is uncertain, and the decisions made about it will have far-reaching consequences. We're at a crossroads, and the choices we make now will determine the path we take towards a more open and interconnected internet, or a more fragmented and controlled one.
So it's not just about TikTok, it's about the internet as a whole.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important for everyone to be engaged in this conversation, to understand the nuances of the debate, and to advocate for the kind of online world we want to live in.
Well, I think our listener is walking away with a much deeper understanding of what's really going on with TikTok and why this issue matters so much. But before we wrap up, I have one last question for you. You've studied this issue in depth. You've seen all sides of the argument. What's your personal take? Where do you stand on this whole TikTok debate?
That's a tough one. It's not a simple black and white issue.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I understand the concerns about data security and the potential for influence, especially given TikTok's origins and the opacity of its algorithm.
So you're leaning towards the better safe than sorry approach.
Not necessarily. What gives me pause is the slippery slope argument. If we ban TikTok based on these fears, what's next? Do we start scrutinizing every app, every website, based on the nationality of its developers?
That's a good point. It could lead to a very fragmented internet where access to information is determined by your location or your government's political stance.
Exactly. And that's what worries me. It could create a world where the internet is no longer this open, interconnected space, but a series of walled gardens controlled by national interests and political agendas.
That's a pretty bleak picture. I mean, the internet has always been about breaking down those barriers, connecting people across borders, fostering a sense of global community.
Right. And that's what's at stake here. It's not just about TikTok. It's about the future of the internet and the values we want to uphold in the digital age. Do we prioritize security and control at the expense of openness and freedom? Or do we find a way to balance those competing interests?
Ooh, it feels like we're at a crossroads, and the decisions made about TikTok could set a precedent for how we approach these challenges in the future.
Absolutely. And that's why it's crucial for everyone to be engaged in this conversation.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of the potential consequences, to weigh the risks and benefits, and to advocate for the kind of online world we want to live in.
So what's your advice for our listener? What should they be doing to navigate this complex landscape?
Stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussions, and don't be afraid to challenge the easy answers. The more we understand the nuances of this issue, the better equipped we'll be to make informed decisions about our own digital lives and the future of the internet as a whole.
It's easy to get caught up in the hype, the fear-mongering, the clickbait headlines, but it's important to step back, think critically, and form our own opinions.
Exactly. And that's what this deep dive is all about. We're not here to tell you what to think, but to equip you with the knowledge and insights to make up your own mind.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of TikTok and the future of the internet, is there one final thought, one key takeaway you'd like to leave our listener with?
If TikTok is fundamentally different from other social media giants due to its origin and algorithm, does that justify different rules, even if it limits personal freedoms? It's a tough question with no easy answers, but it's a question we all need to grapple with as we navigate this new digital landscape.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. I think you just dropped a major truth bomb on our listener. So we've gone from dance trends to geopolitical power plays to a full-blown existential crisis about the future of the internet. That's a pretty epic deep dive.
It is, and it's a conversation that's just beginning.
Well, thank you for being our guide through this complex and thought-provoking landscape.
It's been a pleasure as always.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a deeper understanding of the forces at play in this TikTok saga and why it matters for all of us. Keep an eye on this story because it's far from over. The insights you've gained from this deep dive will give you an edge in following future developments and forming your own informed opinions. Until next time, keep diving deep. Stay curious and don't be afraid to challenge the algorithm.
Exactly. And that's what worries me. It could create this world where the internet isn't this open, connected thing anymore, but it's like a bunch of walled gardens, you know?
Yeah, controlled by governments, not the free and open internet we're used to.
Right. And that's what we're talking about here. It's bigger than just TikTok. It's about what kind of internet we want. What values matter in this digital age.
Security versus freedom. It's a tough balance.
It is. And the decisions we make about TikTok, they could set a precedent for everything online. How we deal with these challenges in the future.
So it feels like this is a turning point, a real crossroads.
I think so. And that's why it's so important for people to be a part of this conversation, to really get what's at stake here.
Not just blindly following the hype or the fear-mongering.
Right. We need to understand the different sides, the risks, the benefits, and then fight for the kind of internet we want to live in.
So for our listeners, someone who's been following this, what's your advice? How do they navigate this whole mess?
Stay informed, first of all. Don't just read the headlines, dig deeper. Find different perspectives, and don't be afraid to question the easy answers.
Yeah, don't just accept what you're being told. Think for yourself.
Exactly. The more we understand the details of this, the better decisions we can make about our own digital lives and about the future of the internet as a whole.
So this deep dive, it's not about telling people what to think.
Nope. It's about giving them the information they need to make up their own WN minds.
Okay, so as we wrap up, we've gone from viral dances to the future of the internet. It's been quite a journey.
It has. But it's a conversation that's just getting started.
Is there one final thought, one key takeaway you want to leave our listener with?
I think the big question is this. If TikTok IS, really different from other social media, because of where it came from, because of its algorithm, does that mean it deserves different rules? Even if those rules limit our freedom? It's a tough one, no easy answers, but it's something we all have to think about.
Wow, yeah. That's a lot to chew on. We've gone from silly trends to like a full-on existential crisis about the internet.
It's been a pretty epic deep dive.
It really has. Thank you for walking us through it all.
My pleasure. Always happy to dive deep.
And to our listener, we hope this has given you a much clearer picture of what's going on with TikTok and why it matters so much. Keep an eye on this story because it's not going away anytime soon, and what you've learned here today will help you understand what comes next. Until next time, keep diving deep, stay curious, and don't let the algorithm think for you.